Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is Sharon Tromp from Triple Heart Ministries. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, Gavin.
Well, Triple Heart Ministries, we'll see my wife's had a bypass and a heart valve replacement, and there are triple bypasses, but what's this?
I minister into the heart in the spirit realm, and I have a passion for it. I've been doing it for well over 10 years now, and that's why I'm here today. Wow,
that's pretty exciting. But life began for you a long time ago. Well, like yesterday, you remember it. Tell me about yesterday.
I grew up in a Christian family. My parents went to church. We all went to church, and I had a very normal upbringing. But as life went on, things took a turn for the worse. But it started off all pretty normal.
Okay, so kids and funs and jumping the neighbour's fence and rolling around in their cabbage patch and things?
Yeah, we grew up in the eastern suburbs, in the bush, on a large block of land, and a very happy childhood. My dad ran a chook farm, and we had lots of eggs and chooks and things like that.
So you were sort of asked to pack eggs and check?
Collect the eggs.
Only collect?
Yeah.
Did you run the eggs past a light and let the light shine in and see if there was any?
Yes, my mum did that job.
Okay.
And then we packed them into the little egg cartons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to see if there's any little chickies gestating there?
Yeah, we don't want them in the egg carton, do we?
No, we don't. But it's interesting. You have to hold it to the light, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And school, where'd you go?
I went to Mount Evan Christian School.
Oh, you did?
And very much enjoyed my time there.
Okay. Parent controlled, of course.
Yeah.
Nice to have parents' input.
Yeah.
That's great. And then you're loosely working with another school that actually I was involved in starting. So
Mountain District Christian School. Yeah, I've been working at both schools.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And teenage years, what was happening then?
Went to church, went to school, went to youth club, did lots of fun things at youth club. Grew very much in a church environment, but always had plans to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. So I set my sights on university. Yeah. I went to Monash University, did a Bachelor of Arts, then did a Dip Ed, and then began to look for a job. Yeah.
Okay. Did you find a job easily?
No, it wasn't very easy. That was in the 80s. And I did get a job at Beacon Hills Christian College. That was my first school, and I worked there for 2 years. And then I went back to Mount Evan Christian School and worked there for a few years. Oh,
wow. Yeah. Okay. So you've had really a long association up in there hills.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
And all right, what was your informative component as far as, let's use the word spirituality? What was happening in these years?
Well, I've always known Jesus. I've always been a Christian. There was no conversion point or time. I grew up in that environment, and I guess I must have always had faith because I always believed that Jesus was the Son of God. In church, I took an active role. I did Sunday school, I did youth club, in leadership positions. Did lots of things like that. It was really good.
Okay, so that's your real world, real life, let's call it.
Yeah.
But what else was kind of buzzing around on the inside as far as your thoughts and feelings and self-talk? What was happening in that world?
In my teenage years, it was a very happy time in my life. My young adult years were very good too. I married young. I married at 19. So my husband and I planned our life, together from a young age. We wanted to grow up, because I was still young. To grow up, I wanted to get a career in teaching and then have a family and settle down. Yeah, so that was both our goals, and that's what we worked towards.
Right. And his role?
Yeah, he works as a policeman.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
And which side of Melbourne, or is he sort of...
Out in the eastern suburbs.
All right,
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, and you have some children to reference?
Yes, I do. So after I worked at Mount Evan Christian School, we decided to start a family, and my first child was a girl, Laura, and she's 27 now and happily married, so we're very, very happy about that. My next child was a son, Jared, and he's 25 and he's happily married too. So I'm very happy about that.
That's great.
Yeah.
They're good things to be happy about.
Yeah, and then I have one more.
Okay.
My youngest child is a daughter, Rachel. She's 21 and at uni.
Okay. Now, is it your eldest daughter who's a bit of an artist?
Yes, she is an artist, but just a casual artist in her home time and at home. She doesn't produce anything for public. But yeah, I've asked her to draw a few things of the things I've seen, and she's been very accommodating. Yeah.
All right, well, we might have a little look at that later on.
Okay.
But there are ways of knowing. So as a teacher, what are these ways of knowing?
Yeah, I think it's a great word, ways of knowing. Not everybody knows and learns in the same way. So some people learn through visuals, some people learn through audio, hearing things, some people work with their hands manually. And as a teacher, the aim is to provide a broad spectrum of ways of knowing.
Okay, so without referring to it just yet, but in the background here in our conversation is one of those ways of knowing, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we might unpackage that as well later on.
Okay.
So being a teacher, what were some of the hurdles?
Well, first of all, I had to choose subjects at university, and I started off with Indonesian and history. They were my passions. But when I came to the end of my university undergraduate years, there were no jobs going for Indonesian teachers, and I had to change track at that point when I did my dip ed, and I became a geography and a history teacher.
All right.
So that was a disappointment.
Okay. Now, not knowing just how much practice you've had with Indonesian, but if there are Indonesian people watching, would you like to welcome them to the show?
Apa khabar semua?
Well, thank you for doing that. That's something I could never do. That's a delightful welcome. And so these ways of knowing have really ministered back to you, haven't they?
They have. I minister a lot to wounded people, and wounding goes in all those different ways. In all those different ways of knowing, the wounding goes in as well. But,
so you're saying to myself and those listening, we can be wounded, but there's no external scars?
There can be internal scars and there can be external scars, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as we're wounded in all those different ways, God comes in all those different ways too. And that's been part of my journey, just encountering God in all those different creative ways. He never comes just one way all the time. It's unknown, it's unexpected, and it's just incredible.
Well, we're going to go away for a moment, but come back quickly. You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is Sharon Tromp from Triple Heart Ministries. Hearts are very precious things, aren't they?
They are. And what I discovered is that everything originates from out of the heart. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for out of it comes the wellspring of life.
So we can get wounded very early.
Very early. I'd even say all the way back to conception.
Okay, now let's unpackage that for a moment. So we're going to travel back in time, because time is a little different when we think this way too, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm a believer that God holds all time in his hand. God, if you want to say it, sits out of time, and he holds time within his hand. Yeah.
So way back in the womb to conception.
Yeah.
Tell me about that world.
Well, it's a hidden world, obviously in utero, but nothing is hidden to God. He knows everything that's going on in that time. And I believe that at conception, God gives us a human spirit that grows with the growing embryo, and that spirit is already alert and awake at the moment of conception. And yeah, it remembers.
Wow. Well, your daughter did a drawing. She takes us on a visual journey back into the womb room.
Yeah. So when I was personally receiving ministry at Crossway, I joined Susan Fengler's support group for women because I was needing support at that time. And Susan taught us all about God and about the spiritual realm. And she said, in the heart, there are lots of rooms. All the treasures are in our heart, the good treasures and the painful treasures. And by the power of the Holy Spirit and with Jesus, we can go visit those places.
That must have knocked you for six.
That was such a shock. I'd never heard anything like that before. But if you hear it, you think, well, if there's truth, I'm going to try it. So I went home that night and I tried it. Yeah.
Okay, take us through some of those steps of trying.
Yeah. So I just went to a quiet place. I was quite ill in those days, so my quiet place was at home in bed. And I just lay quietly in my bed in the bedroom, and I closed my eyes, and I said, Jesus, the word says that you are truth. You will come to me as the truth. Please come to me now and show me the truth of what went on in utero.
Okay. Now let's help our listeners understand this unwell period of time.
Okay.
You want to take people into that world?
Okay. So I've already shared that I had a very normal childhood and a very normal sort of the 20-year-old stage. But in my late 20s, I suddenly became unwell in 1993. And it was an unwellness for years. So I went to the doctor, and they explored and they decided that perhaps in the end it had to do with food allergies. And he recommended that I just not take the foods that made me feel ill. And I practiced that for 10 years. And at the end of the 10 years, I wasn't really eating anymore. I'd lost a lot of weight, and all my blood work was very poor.
All right. So this is a long period of time of volitionally not starving yourself, just testing foods, and you found so much.
I was very nauseous in those days and very sick, and just found it difficult to stand up and go about my daily life, my daily business, and I just got weaker and weaker.
So you go home this night with some interesting concepts and thoughts, and this can't be for real.
Yeah. I was really struggling, and I was looking for answers, and I felt that God had led me to this place. And we just talked about spiritual things. Like, I've shared that I've been a Christian my whole life, but I never really practiced the things that I learnt under Susan's ministry and guidance. And she really mentored how to hear from God. And I'm familiar with hearing God through the Bible, through the Word, but I wasn't very familiar with experientially hearing God.
Okay, so sometimes I hear my daughter say to her 5 and 3-year-old, now put your listening ears on. Okay, so let's become childlike for a moment and put our listening ears on. So tell us again, how do we listen?
Just find a quiet spot and be willing. I think that's the starting point, to be willing and to be soft to the voice of the Spirit. So I just lay in bed and I go, God, I had this encounter with the womb today and I don't understand it. Could you please explain it to me? So, yeah.
Okay, well, let's unpackage this encounter with the womb.
So I was in Susan's group, and she said, we're going to visit the womb room today. And I'd never heard of what is a womb room? And I didn't have any belief at that time at all. I just didn't have any faith that we could do this, that anything would happen. I was totally in unbelief. Yet even despite my unbelief, God spoke to me. And the words that I heard is, I have to get out of here. I have to get out of the womb. It's not a safe place.
So let's unpackage that a bit more.
Yeah, so I went home, I lay down and I go, that's really odd, God. Like, isn't the womb a safe place? Like, nothing can get in there. Surely I'm safe in there. And God showed me the picture of a corridor and said, here's my son Jesus, and I want you to follow Jesus down the corridor, and he's going to take you to this room, to this womb room, and then we're going to go in and have a look and see how it's still impacting you now in your adult years. So the Bible says that we can pray in Ephesians to have the eyes of our heart opened. And so I asked God that he would show me pictures that I would be able to see with the eyes of my heart. So these are the pictures that I saw, and then I had my eldest daughter draw them for me.
Okay, she was about 16 at the time.
Yeah, she was just in her teenage years, and she was cooperative and helpful and drew as best she could as what I described. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they were very graphic and they were very meaningful to me. And I look at them today and I still can clearly remember that encounter with Jesus that night. Yeah.
Okay. The drawings suggest a little bit of darkness. Do you want to try and unpackage that?
All right. So I never go anywhere without Jesus. Always go with Jesus and by the power of the Spirit. So he led and I followed. I didn't sort of think anything up. I just looked at what he was unpacking. And I saw the door to the womb room, and Jesus opened the door, and just an atmosphere of death came out of that room, out of that door. And I couldn't understand it because I thought, I'm growing in there, I'm alive, this is a good place, life is beginning. Why would darkness and death come out of that room? Yeah.
Well, we'll go back into that womb room in a moment.
Okay.
You've been watching Support Life, and we'll be back after this. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is Sharon Tromp from the Triple Heart Ministries. Now, Sharon, we're talking about the heart and where it takes us if we allow it and with God's help. So we're back in the womb room. Take us to the last part of this journey.
Yeah, so there was a spiritual atmosphere of death, not physical, but a spiritual atmosphere of death in that room, and it just had continued to roll out over my life as an undercurrent over my life, and I feel impacted why I got ill in the 90s. And Jesus came and met with me in that place, and he was just incredible. He just opened a window to that room, and he got a jug and he poured something into that room. And I go, "What are you pouring in?" And he said, "It's the blood of the Lamb." And he just poured it in, and as he poured his blood into that room, the darkness just receded, just like that instantly. It was incredible. And then he came and stood next to me as I was growing in the womb. He came and stood next to me, and he says, "I'm going to look after you, Sharon. I'm going to protect you." It's very powerful for me, yeah.
Well, that's a great space and place to move out into the world that you now live in. But there's something niggling here on the set. It's a painting. Help us through to understand.
So that healing I had in the mid-2000s, and then last year I was in church watching an artist paint, Diane Mollison, and she does prophetic paintings, and she was painting this image here in church, and I looked at it, and it just so reminded me of that encounter that I'd had in the womb. You know, "I've always wanted you, always wanted you." And it just spoke to me, and I said to my husband, "I have to have that painting."
Did it cost a fortune?
Not a fortune, but a bit. Yeah.
Well, for life, it's good to pay the price for that abundant life, isn't it? The price is paid for us, really, but you bought the painting, and here it is.
I have the painting hanging in my study, and when I walk out of my bedroom every morning, it's the painting that greets me. And I just speak those words over myself. Father says, "I've always wanted you, Sharon, always." Yeah, it's very life-giving for me.
Well, now that, for those that like mantras, that's a good mantra, isn't it, from Jesus?
Yeah, yeah.
So do you want to say it again?
"I've always wanted you." Father says that to me. He says it over everybody. He says it over you, Gavin. "I've always wanted you, Gavin, always."
So I'm not alone ever.
No.
I never say.
No.
We're not alone.
No. And what I love about the painting is that around it is written "in the very beginning." And no matter how far we can go back to the beginning of my life, we can go back to the beginning of civilizations, we can go back to Genesis, we can go back to the beginning of time, and even before that, in eternity past. And Father has always been speaking those words over his creation, over his children. "I've always wanted you, always."
Well, there's a sound kind of anchoring point to reflect on that. There's either no one who really looks after us or cares for us enough to say, "I'm there from the beginning with you."
And what I love about God is that he tops up. We've all had parents at some point, a mother and a father that have conceived us and born us, and they've loved us as best they can, but oftentimes it's not been sufficient, but they've always given their best shot. And then God just comes along like that jug, and he just pours in that top up just to get us through. And then he pours to overflowing so that we have sufficiency and abundance. I love it. I love the imagery. Yeah.
And that's important as a way of knowing that it's the imagery, both in words and in picture.
Yeah.
But we have to let it settle in our hearts, don't we, that imagery? What do we fight it?
Well, everyone has a choice. Everyone has free will. Everyone has a choice what they want to believe, what they choose to believe. I've chosen to believe Jesus. This is what he's spoken over me time and time as I've encountered him in prayer ministry. And I've just opened my heart and just let it come in. At the beginning it was drops because it was hard, but now my heart is an open vessel, and I just allow God to pour. And as he pours into me, then I open my hands and allow the goodness of what he's poured into me to pour into others.
All right, it's 2016 and the year's moving along quite fast. So what's What are you pouring out this year?
All right, so I run one-day retreats and I invite people to come along, men and women, and I pour over them. And this month, on the 19th of March, I'm doing Womb Time Ministry in Ringwood. Yeah.
Okay. So can we get an idea, just a little bit of how it works when you say I'm pouring out? So you've received living water by faith, and so you're longing to help people, and so the words that you say come from where?
Well, they come from the scripture.
Yeah.
I love the verse from Jeremiah 1 verse 5. I've known you before you were formed in the womb. I've always known you. And that's going to be my starting point. God has known us from the very beginning. There's nothing unknown about our history. There's nothing unknown about our womb type. There's nothing unknown about our presence. He's always known us. He's always wanted us. And he has a word, as he's spoken into my life, he has a word to speak into your life as well.
So this is very different for a young person who says, I've got lots of friends. I've got 3,000 people on Facebook.
Yeah, but Jesus is intimate. He's incredibly intimate and incredibly present. No matter where I go, good times, bad times, here or there, he's present. It's just like Jesus, and he's there.
So if we want an always there person, we find it not on Facebook, but we find it in his words for us.
In relationship. Yeah. Jesus has words, they're written down in the scriptures, but the relationship is intimate and it's personal. It's very personal. And that's what was new to me, and that's what I love about it. It's so personal. It's so intimate. It's wonderful.
Okay, and it's eternal. It can't be robbed from you?
No, it can't be stolen. You can choose to give it up because we always have free will. You can choose to go, I don't want it anymore, and God will honour that. But he's always got his heart towards us. He's always offering. He's always pouring. It says in the painting, I've always wanted you, and that's what I'm going with.
Okay. Some of the other words around the painting are what?
In the very beginning. And you know, I find that significant because there's no point in my life that there's been no God, no love, no pouring out of me. It goes all the way back to the very beginning. My life, your life, everyone else's life, time. As far as we can go back to the very beginning. Yeah.
So in the beginning, I am, he says.
Yeah. And time originates within God. I don't believe God is bound by time. I believe time sits in his hands.
Unfortunately, we're bound by a little bit of time.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon, so much.
Thank you for having me.
You've been watching Support Life. That's all for our program today. Join us again next week. Goodbye.